New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Free my mind, open my heart with the whispers of truth. To live a conscious life, to live a conscious life on the growing edge. On the growing edge.
And now, here's Allie.
Hello and welcome to Growing Edge Live. I'm Allie Benjamin, and it is my great joy to be here today. We have a special show today that is a little different than our regular conversations with soul-centered individuals that channel their time, their talent, their energy into doing good works in the world. And my guest today is sort of my co-host, and she definitely does channel her time, her talent, and her energy, creativity, and resources into doing good work in the world. And so Michelle Medrano, who is a colleague of mine and a fellow student of the Enneagram with me, we are both really enjoying developing our knowledge and deepening our practice of the Enneagram and bringing that into our work and into our lives. So welcome, Michelle.
Thank you so much, Allie. It's great to be with you again.
It is. It's so good to be here. It's been a while. We were just talking before the show. I think it's January.
Yes, January. We had an Enneagram chat to start the year off, and then we both been moving along in life, just keeping it going, right?
Yeah. How are things going for you? You're in Colorado. I'm in Utah. What's going on in the world around you?
Well, it's as I think a lot of people are experiencing it, tumultuous times of change and a little bit of a sense of unknown in front of us. And no matter what your belief is about how those unknowns are unfolding, it can be a little bit daunting and challenging to understand what's coming next. So dealing with a lot of people who are in the question and who are watching things unfold in the news as we always do, but it seems like a very intense time right now. So things are going like that, lots of conversations. And then I personally am enjoying doing a lot of typings and conversations with people about the Enneagram and always trying to use that, as I know you are, to understand whatever's going on in my world and in the world around us. It's a great way to see life, a lens to see life through. Yeah,
beautiful. Yeah, and I'm here in Utah. It's sort of emerging weather from, full spring weather. So we've got snow one day, rain the next, sun, and
same with us. Yes, in Colorado, same here.
Yeah, we're kind of both in the sort of the base of the mountains,
Yes.
Yeah. Things are similar with me in my world. I'm noticing that there's a lot of people in, not just in my life, but on social media that I'm noticing that are in a space of uncertainty. And so, I think that shows like this, where we can have conversations about our lives and what we do to meet the moment and rise up to be able to harness our energy, our positivity, knowing that we have an impact, and you and I are both ministers. And so we really do have our finger on the pulse of people as far as their day-to-day life, what's working, what they're struggling with. And, in New Thought, we're definitely wanting to support people in keeping their eye on their vision, on who they're becoming, and how to get there. And I think for you and I, having this deep immersion into the Enneagram over the last few years has really been helpful in preparing us for these times.
Mhm. I think you're right because one thing that is really core about the Enneagram, it's all about motivation, and so it allows me to see myself and other people that I talk with and other people that I see even on the news and try to understand that human beings have a deep, deep sense of what motivates them to be the way they are, to behave the way they behave, to do the things that they do. And I find that a really fascinating thing to contemplate. I've often joked about the number one thing in the four agreements that Don Miguel Ruiz put out was about not taking things personally. And I think when we understand the Enneagram, it makes it a lot easier not to take things personally because it then becomes a conversation of, oh, they're being motivated right now by something. Even if I don't understand that person's number, I can at least contemplate, well, if they were a one, for example, they're really interested in getting it right. They just want to get it right, do it right, be right. And that might be a healthy motivation or a little less healthy motivation, but it helps me to understand it a little bit more, which then can allow me to hold it a little lighter at times,
Mm-hmm.
not heavy about it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely. I think that when we have an understanding of the Enneagram, the nine personality types,
Mhm.
and we can get a clearer understanding of who's who in our family or in our
Yes,
world,
yes.
especially if they're willing to dive into the conversation a little deeper and actually discover their type, then that can lead to some real, what I would call growing edge conversations, like
Mhm.
learning about each other and being able to understand each other's mental fixations or motivations or blind spots or
Blind spots.
strengths. Then we
Yes.
have a greater way of developing our relationship and
Mhm.
moving through struggles and challenging times.
Most
Yeah.
definitely. Mhm. Very useful tool
So
for.
today we plan to talk about how the Enneagram has impacted our lives, has blessed
Mhm.
us, and supported us, each of us, in our ministries and beyond. And
Mhm.
so I asked you to come up with a few things that would answer that, and I have two.
Good.
So should we dive into what we've both been blessed with or
Yes.
by with the Enneagram?
Mhm. Yes,
Oh,
definitely. Good.
there's Michael jumping on saying good morning
Mhm.
to all. Yeah,
Good. Mhm.
he says feels the same way. And
Mhm.
for those of you that don't know, Michael is my husband, and obviously he's watching as he's at work. And yeah, it's definitely supported our relationship for sure. And we'll dive
Yes.
into that. So what would you say is one of the things that the Enneagram has blessed you with?
The number one thing I would say is self-awareness, and I think that that is something that we humans yearn for, although we may not always realize it, that self-awareness, self-knowledge, um, greater peace than with myself by understanding myself, and therefore greater patience with myself. I will admit totally that when I first encountered the Enneagram, and this is often true for me in my life. I don't know about for you or for our listeners, but sometimes the big resistance that I get to something, like pushback from me, that I encounter something and I think, no way. I can point to a number of times in my life where that kind of big resistance was an indicator of something that was some of the greatest path for me to take or blessing in my life. And I think the Enneagram was that because upon encountering it, my immediate thoughts went to, I don't want to be put in a box. I don't want to be limited. I feel like this is going to limit me. If I fall into a box, then I won't ever get out, and I'll just be typecast as whatever, right? And then I also know that this happens for some people who are exploring and working to discover the number they lead with. I did not like the number that I thought was probably the one I lead with. I was resistant to it. It was probably one of the numbers I was the most resistant to. I didn't want to be it, and it took a while. And then eventually, when I finally surrendered into I am that, then it felt like things could really open up for me. And I love how our teacher, my mom, Linda, talks about, until we really do understand where we are here, we're in a box ourselves. We're limited by our lack of self awareness, and opening that box up and really looking at myself. And of course, all the relationships I have with other numbers in the nine system has been a blessing that has allowed me to say, okay, I'm not deeply flawed. I'm not there's not something horribly dysfunctional or wrong with me. I'm a three. I'm just leading with my three right now. This is what's motivating me. This is what's important to me. And when I finally accepted it and surrendered to it, it felt like this great peace washed over me, like, okay, yeah, that's just how I tend to view things. It's not right. It's not wrong. It's not better. It's not worse. Sometimes it's more effective and less effective, but I now have something to work with. And by having something to work with, then I could get about something that's always been really important to me, self improvement. I can work to improve myself. I think a lot of people live in this unknown mystery about why I am the way I am, and why I do the things I do, and why the things that I think are important are important. And this just helped kind of smooth all that out. And upon understanding that, could go, oh, all right, then I see now why I am the way I am and why I've done the things I've done. And it just brought a peace, an inner peace that I can't even describe probably. Have you felt that way too,
Oh,
Allie?
absolutely. And I'm looking at my list of things that I wrote down. And yeah, my top one was I've learned about my particular personality,
Mhm.
self-awareness. And yeah, it was hard. Like you, I read through the brief description of each of the nine types, and the one that I thought was the worst was the one that I am, which is the type 4. And obviously, or maybe not, I've come to really appreciate being a 4. And I wouldn't say, if I look at the list now of the nine types and their descriptions or their strengths and weaknesses, I wouldn't have that judgment or
Mhm.
intolerance for that type. It's like everything, like you said, is smoothed. There's a deeper peace with all the ways that people show up in the world. It's
Mhm.
definitely allowed me to see myself in that box. And I think it was the author Ian Cron who said something about the Enneagram doesn't put you in a box. It helps you to see the box that you've already been living in.
Right, right.
And
Mhm.
so, and in our teaching of Ernest Holmes and Science of Mind, um, he talks about getting out of the box or opening the box. And so I love that analogy of our personality does in some way feel like a box that we're living in. And
Mhm.
the Enneagram has helped me see that I have, if I'm not careful or if I'm triggered or angry in some way about something, I can sort of put myself into that box of my personality, the ego structure that in my case for the 4 has a tendency to spiral into this sort of narrow space of feeling like there's something missing in
Mm.
my life. There's something not quite right. I'm not quite right. And how
Yes.
come that person seems to have it easier than I do? And then I can really get fixated. And it's not, envy isn't jealousy. It's not like I want, what she has or he has. It's more of a looking at what's out there that somehow always gets reflected back to myself. There's something missing in me. And
Mhm.
so, and the four can be in that space of really wanting to go deeper and have a deeper awareness of who we are and why
Yes.
we're here. And so if I'm not careful, I can really go down that spiral.
Sure.
But also it's me, not in the deep, dark, negative space, being inquisitive, wondering why people are the way they are, why I'm different than they are. That's really been fundamental to me in the work I do as a
Mhm.
minister and a coach, the work I do as an artist. It has really helped me to go deeper and to be really curious about the human condition. And
Mhm.
so I think that, once we understand these labels or these personality types, that seemingly all people kind of fit into one of these boxes. There's a lot more to it than just 9, by the way.
Sure.
But
Sure.
if we're using the Enneagram as a growth tool,
Mhm.
we can definitely see ourselves in one primarily, and then explore all the other types as opportunities to develop and grow and expand our sense of self. Because when we're locked in that box, there isn't a lot of room for growth. And
Mm-mm.
so for me, the Enneagram has opened me up to see the infinite possibilities and just pay more attention to, when I get kind of locked in and get really kind of stubborn in that, depending on what's
Mhm.
going on in the world.
Sure.
Yeah, understanding myself has been the first thing on my list. And I think for anyone exploring the Enneagram, understanding your type, understanding
Mhm.
all of the types gives
Mhm.
us a greater sense of, okay, I'm me. I have a
Mm.
tendency sometimes to be, trapped in this identity or this personality, but I also have the capacity to expand my perspective and not take myself so seriously and not label myself as that all the time, but allow myself to be that, but be more.
Mhm. Sure, sure. And I think sometimes people might be tempted to think that this exploration of who I am is somehow selfish, but the truth that I've come to discover through this, and as you've mentioned through our spiritual pathway that we're on, um, I think that for those who truly do take that journey of self-discovery, they make a huge difference in who they be, if you will, and how they behave in their relationships. It allows them to be a more functional human being versus someone who is not at all curious about what makes them tick and thinks it's a selfish pathway to do that. I think it is a self responsible pathway, a pathway of accountability to learn about myself and to discover who I am and how I am, just for the reasons you just mentioned, so that I can improve myself where I need to, where I can have more compassion for myself. And it's been said that people tend to treat us about as good as we treat ourselves. And so when I have self-compassion and understanding for, hey, you've fallen into that 3 thing where you're hoping that everyone will think you're perfect and think you look good right now, and it's okay, and you can let that go. What if you practice being more authentic right now? What if you step up to the plate and get out of your blind spot and do something different? And boy, just that shift right there has allowed me to show up for people in my life in a completely different way, and allowed me to feel a greater sense of connection to the people that I share my life with and that I love. And that in itself is a great gift. If that's all I ever got out of the Enneagram, boy, my goodness, that has made a huge difference to me. And it's just so much more. So I think it's an act of love, self-love and self-care when we do this, and it benefits everything we do and all of our relationships.
Absolutely. And I think, when we get logged into the personality and, we're not really moving in the direction that we want to go.
No.
It's a self-sabotage. We understanding the Enneagram, we begin to see that we're sabotaging ourselves with this kind of route, locked in kind of rut that we have a tendency. You talk about a 3 wanting to appear successful, or make a good impression,
Avoid failure.
avoid failure and all
Yes.
that. And with me, the 4, the individualist, it's all about being unique and special and finding my way there. But somehow in my twisted way of thinking, that I've got to be more concerned with what's missing or what I'm lacking versus the way out of this unhealthy kind of fixation is to look at what I have that is such a blessing in my life. Because many of the types can focus more on what's wrong or what's missing, or what they're fearful about, or and when we can see that, oh, there I go again, going down that road.
Yes.
When there's a way out, and the
Right.
way out to what we really want. And you and I are both heart types.
Yes.
And there's 3 centers of intelligence: the body, the head, and the heart. And you and I both being heart types, we're very, very motivated to make connections with others, to make sure our relationships are in good order. And so if I'm over here, grumbling inside myself about what's missing, I'm missing my opportunity to make connections.
Right.
But when I'm out there counting my blessings and having more of a balanced, not just self-absorbed kind of way of being, but a more focused out there in the world, then I'm accomplishing my ultimate goal, which is to be a beneficial presence and make good connections. And so, the Enneagram has been so helpful for both of us, it sounds like, in understanding ourselves, having greater self-awareness, and how, like you said, it's not a selfish thing to do this kind of deep inner work. It's very liberating, so that we can have a better energy within our home, energy at our workplace, because we're more aware of ourselves and our impact on others.
Absolutely. Yes.
So what else do you have, Michelle? What else has blessed you or impacted you as far as your Enneagram studies and journey?
Well, we've pointed to it and somewhat mentioned it a few times. And I would say the next part then has to do with, as you mentioned, heart types wanting connection with others. And so being someone who craves connection with people and loves having relationships, always have had plenty of friends and people in my life, to understand other people, and especially my primary relationships, the people that I'm closest to not, again, put people in a box and just say, oh, well, there goes my husband, he's just being a perfectionist again, or, oh, my mom, she's being her forley self again. Not from some resignated place of, oh, well, they just can't help it kind of thing, but a deeper understanding of really, truly, again, not taking things so personally. It's been very liberating. I actually, my former husband, some people call them their husbands. My husband, he's a great man, and he is a 7. And to have understood him throughout our marriage much better as a 7 was so eye-opening and so satisfying. To understand my son who leads with a 5, and to go, oh, okay, to understand my current husband who leads with a 1 and know what's important to him it makes me feel happy to know this, and to know that when that something comes up that's important to him like that, I can give it to him when he's motivated for really being precise and wanting to do something right. He's not just trying to irritate me. He's actually trying to do something that he thinks is very important to forward things in our relationship. And boy, my level of charge around people has dramatically decreased after understanding the Enneagram, especially in the space of being in a relationship with someone who understands themselves from the Enneagram, or who I understand their number a little better. Oh my gosh, some of the most freeing communication, conversations, um, a greater benefit of the doubt, and allowing people to be who they are. That is just a huge and tremendous gift, I think, to all of my most important relationships and friendships.
I'd love to go a bit deeper into that, because some people listening might not understand the 7, the 4, and the 1.
Yes, all the ones I just mentioned.
Yeah. So when you say, your husband, whatever you called it, can you say what used to maybe was a bit of an unknown for you about the set, like what used to trigger you for him being a 7, and then now you have awareness, like how, what you're.
Yes. One of the primary things that showed up in our relationship was when we would travel. I often tell people this story because it really did depict this experience. The 7, whom many people call the adventurer or the otters of the universe, they love options and choice, and they're very fun-loving people. And 7s are that whenever we do a group of 7s together, the energy is just really high. I experience, because they're just very outgoing, energetic people. So when my former husband and I would travel, often we would go to some new place we'd never been before. And I work really hard, not that he didn't work hard too, but I work really hard. And sometimes when I go on a vacation, I need a little downtime before I'm ready to just jump in and start exploring. Well, that's the opposite engine of most 7s. Most 7s go to a new place, and it doesn't matter if they didn't sleep on the plane or they haven't had sleep for 2 days. They want to go everywhere and see everything as soon as they possibly can. And he and I would have this. It wasn't pleasant sometimes to travel together because we had competing needs, which many relationships, of course, have competing needs. And it helped me to understand the Enneagram, to understand this was a primary motivation for a 7 to explore, to be an adventurer, and to say, oh, and I first fell into my 3 by wanting to look good to him by just pushing myself, as a 3 can do. I'm exhausted, but I will push myself for the sake of my husband, and I will let myself be dragged around. And then I'll come home sick from my vacation. I'll come home exhausted from my vacation. So when we discovered this about ourselves, upon understanding the Enneagram, what we began to negotiate was when we would travel, I would say to him, you go out and you do all the exploring you want in those first maybe 8 hours that we'd arrived at a new location. And you find the things that you know that I would most love to see. And I'm going to rest. And when I'm all rested, you take me to those places. And then we found this peace in our relationship because he would gladly go out. He'd go out and explore. He'd go out and eat all the foods he wanted to eat at all these sketchy vendors that I was like, oh, I don't know about that. And it really was just a little view into that relationship between that 7 and 3 that allowed me to understand and allowed us to manage our travel and many other things after that, where we could go, okay, here's what we both need. Here's what is motivating both of us. How do we find a way in our marriage so that we can both have what will meet those needs? So it was a powerful, powerful experience for sure.
It sounds like it. Why don't we take a short break, and then we'll
Yes.
come back and dive a little bit further down into the 5 and my husband, the 2, and my
The 2.
kids, a 9 and a 4. So we'll be back
Yes.
in just a minute.
Sounds good.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
Free my mind, open my heart with the whispers of truth. To live a conscious life, to live a conscious life on the growing edge. On the growing edge.
And now, here's Allie.
We're back. So, Michelle, you were talking about some of the ways that understanding your loved one's types helped you to not only understand them, but respond differently when you could see them doing them, and it wasn't personal, it was just their nature. So let's briefly touch into the rest of our family members.
Sure.
You know, we can just mention their types because we know what we're talking about, but somebody listening may not understand what
Exactly.
another number is. So what about 5s and 1s?
So my son is a 5, and the 5 is often called the observer. They're very smart beings, intellectually smart, and they are not the most outgoing necessarily, although some 5s can be a little bit outgoing, but often they'll be the ones who are, if there's a group of people gathered, they'll be off to the side watching that group of people, very interested in guarding their resources, time, energy, and money. And it's fascinating to me that my former husband and I knew pretty early on, before we had ever encountered the Enneagram, that our son was somewhat of an introvert. We could tell. I mean, there's lots of conversation about the Enneagram and its genetic components as well as its family of origin components, and we believe that both make a difference. And I would say, with my experience with my son, I think he came in pretty genetically inclined towards being that 5. And we continued to see this unfold in him as he grew older. I would take him to play group with all of my mommy friends and their kids, and it would be all the kids out there playing on the playground and me sitting there with my son in my lap, often watching all the kids play on the playground, not necessarily running and engaging with all of them. It took him a while as he grew older to get comfortable, even with some of those little friends that we hung out with almost every Friday. And that was okay. And what I think was wise of my former husband and I to do is we just let him be who he was in that regard, because we're both extroverts. So we really looked each other in the eye and said, this child is very different from us, and we need to guard his needs and not try to force him to be the extrovert that we were. So being a minister, I would take my son to church and my husband would be with me, and everybody wanted to hold the baby. Can I hold the baby? Can I see the baby? And we knew that this was not something he wanted from the time he was a baby until he got older. So it was about learning to respect his boundaries and using our words to say, no, he's a little more comfortable being with one of us, and he doesn't feel comfortable with other people. I think my mother was one of the few people he would let carry him around at church and that sort of thing, his Nana. And so that has continued to be the truth for him, and it has felt really good to respect and honor him in that regard. And then my current husband, who is the perfectionist, who is very much in, as I mentioned, to wanting to do things right, wanting to get things right, concerned about not getting things wrong. He and I can be lookalikes in the Enneagram. I often talk about the 1 and the 3 as a lookalike. Both appear to want to always get things right or look good or appear to be good. But here's where motivation really shows itself. He wants to do that because there's a right way and a wrong way to do things. And I want it because I want you to be impressed with me and to think that I look good. Right. And so very different motivations, but often similar behavior. And so there's a connectedness in that. And at the same time, he's a very precise person. I'm not so much. I can be willing to do something that's just fine. That'll be good. That'll be good for now. No, he wants it to be precisely very good. So these are things that, as I have understood that about him, and I've begun to see that when it comes to remodeling or putting up some light or something, that my propensity to just have it'll just be good enough, might cause it to fall down in a few years. And his propensity to get it exactly measured to the nth degree and put in right means it's going to be long lasting. That light is going to stay in that light socket. Don't let Michelle do it. And so these are just little ways that we've come to peace with each other. Certainly, the Enneagram types that we encounter can create conflict in relationships. And yet what I've seen both of us be able to do is take a deep breath and step back and go, okay, he wants it this way because of this, or she's focused on this because of that. Understanding each other's motivation really has made a difference. So I think that's been very important to us.
Yeah, that's great. Well, for me, I've got a son that he self-selected. I had him pegged to be at one particular type, and then through conversation, he revealed that he is a 4 like me. So that was very interesting to discover. And when he claimed being a 4, the individualist, everything made sense. Like it made more sense. And I think I hadn't realized that we were the same type. Because we have different subtypes, which is another conversation today. So it's a little different, but I can definitely have more respect for him now and understand that he's got his particular way of doing things, that he wants to, he doesn't want to be told what to do. And he's got a deep connection with who he is and why he's doing what he's doing. And that's not for me to argue with or figure that out. It's him being his unique and special self. So that was really helpful for me and for him to understand that we're very similar. It's given us, it's kind of created sort of a relax in some of the tension areas that had been going on in our conversations, in in us trying to be supportive of one another. So it's reduced the tension, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
With my daughter, she is a 9, which we jumped all over the place with her typing too. And once she said, "No, I don't think I'm a 6." And she said, "I'm more of the 9." And then it made sense. She's definitely someone that's always wanted to be the peacekeeper, the peacemaker, the one that will always focus on what she can do in the world to support others, but not so much concerned with her own needs. And so
Mm-hmm.
there's, just knowing that, why she seems to not take action in certain areas, but she's more focused out here. It's an opportunity for us to have a conversation differently than it would have been had I not known that.
Beautiful.
And then my husband too,
Yes.
who's the helper, and the
Mhm.
helper is definitely someone that is very interested in bringing their particular brand of helpfulness into, and him being a social too, which is,
Mhm.
he's very interested in and very extroverted in wanting to be out there and being helpful. And I remember there was this one story, just like you have your one story about your first husband. My story is, it was Thanksgiving and we just barely finished our meal, and Michael was up and getting another plate full of food, and I'm wondering what he's doing. Well, he wanted to take a plate of food to this customer of his that lived an hour away, who lived alone, and
Mm.
he just would say, stop everything, stop the family celebration, because he wanted to go and offer this man some support through offering him a meal. And
Wow.
so at the time I was annoyed because my family had come into town,
Sure,
and so for
sure.
him to be leaving us all felt like some sort of, didn't feel like a good thing. But
Mhm.
knowing how deeply motivated he is to um to help ease the pain and suffering of others,
Yes.
was, I of course I got on board really quickly with him going to take that meal. But now, 15, 20 years later, I can see it makes so much sense why he would prioritize that.
Mhm. Yeah, beautiful. Yeah.
So let's move on. What else has knowing about the Enneagram, learning about the Enneagram blessed or supported you?
Well,
In what way?
Well, it we teach that we don't look at other people and attempt to type them. So I never look at, say, the president of the United States and think, well, they must be this, or look at some world leader or someone in my life who is having an impact, um, and try to type them. However, I think you and I were talking a little bit about this before we started our show. It does help to create some peace in me sometimes when I see behavior I don't understand from people, from world leaders or celebrities, or people that I share my life with in my church, for example, that I can at the very least contemplate, well, maybe they are an 8 and they have big energy. 8s have big energy. They can be kind of bossy, and they can be very powerful, and they're very prone to be fighting for justice as they see it, and that sort of thing. And so maybe this person has or is connected to an 8, and it at the very least lets me ponder and release my accusations of them in my mind sometimes, to think less of them than I really want to. When we're talking about human relationships, I always want to try to think the best about people. I always want to assume um, good motivation, or as I said earlier, give them the benefit of the doubt kind of thing. And so the Enneagram has helped me to at least contemplate giving people the benefit of the doubt as I consider what might be below the surface of what I see behavior wise. And that can be a peaceful thing for me, and can help me understand people a little better. I find it fascinating. We had this big conversation yesterday in my spiritual community, because I was speaking and I spoke a little bit too long yesterday. And we had all these things we needed to do in our service. And one of my work colleagues is a 2, and like Michael, and he also has, because of the wings, he has this connection to the 1, which is like my husband, of course, the perfectionist. And we have this ongoing conversation about, do people want the service to just be an hour and end it right on time? Or do people want the experience that they've come for, even if it means the minister might talk a little bit longer because they were inspired to go a little bit longer that day, and they don't really care so much about getting out of there right on time? And I think that conversation and that debate is informed by your Enneagram type, because for people who are 4s and 2s and 3s like you and I, the heart types are probably like, bring it, I'm here until it's over, man. I want it all. And the more precise types, like the ones are like looking at their watches going, oh, the service is over by 2 minutes. Oh, and then they just kind of, they might push it all aside because of that. And so I was really caught up in that conversation yesterday, and really wondering and feeling apologetic to the people who want it to end right on time. And at the same time, feeling grateful for the energy that moved through me that yesterday, that allowed me to augment my message a little bit in ways that seemed to benefit people as they came and talked with me after. So I think that the Enneagram helps me to see the world and other people a little bit more clearly.
Yeah. When you were sharing that, I was thinking of that old saying, you can't please all the people all the time.
No,
And I
exactly.
think the Enneagram really helps us to really understand that to be so true. And
Mhm.
also the Enneagram for me, which is my part, my next important thing, or how the Enneagram's impacted me, and my spiritual awareness
Oh, yes, that's
of
wonderful.
really understanding that, yeah, you can't please all the people all the time, but when we're owning ourselves, not just as a personality, because within the Enneagram we talk about these 2 aspects of ourselves, our ego and our essence. And
Mhm.
so our ego wants, certain things to be a certain way, or our ego may think we have to please all the people all the time, but our essence knows it's not true. And
Right.
I think, like you said, being inspired, being in the moment, being able to, you were channeling or downloading or whatever you were doing yesterday that had you go over a little bit, when we can really own our type and own who we are as an emerging, ever evolving, growing edge personality, then we're going to be comfortable, and we're not going to have that over identification with the need to people please or impress or get things
Mhm.
right or find fault or always seeking distraction. Like, we're going to move out of some of those behaviors and find that everything is welcome.
Yes.
When we're up, when we're down, when we're ego, when we're in essence, we're just always having the opportunity to be whoever we are, wherever we are,
Mhm.
and being able to pause and just take a breath around all that has really helped me on my, spiritual path, but really owning who I am and not listening to that inner voice has
Mhm.
been very, very helpful.
Mm. That's great piece. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautifully
What
said.
else? What
Thank
else is
you.
helpful for you, Michelle?
Well, for me personally, I had on my list that it's helped me really connect with friends and family. I know I said relationship earlier, but I'm really grateful to my mother for her expertise, my mother, Linda Frazee, and her willingness to help myself and you and other people in the world really grow and learn from this. So I think it's brought me into really profound, deep relationships and conversations like you and I get to have here on your show, where we get to discuss these important topics. And I always feel a deeper connection with my friend Allie when I leave, because I have a deeper understanding of her and her life and her friendships. And of course, in that heart world, the heart type, feeling more connected is vital to me. So I leave feeling that deeper connection to people that I really care about in my world, and have a greater understanding, which always makes me feel happy, for sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, along those lines, my fourth one on my list is it's helped me to be a better spiritual counselor and
Mm-hmm.
transformation coach. And like you're saying, I have a more sort of heart to heart connection with my clients, because I have deeper awareness around how we can be in our ego, be in our essence. And
Yeah,
so there's a deepening in the work that I do in the world.
definitely.
And, even I've had an opportunity, led a practitioner retreat for the Salt Lake Center last weekend. And it gave me, I noticed as I was organizing my work, getting my information together, putting a workbook together, knowing the Enneagram has helped me to not just make statements that would just speak to my type, but
Right.
more
Yes.
general. Like I've got to consider all the different types that might be
Yes.
present in a
Mm-hmm.
room or in a class or in a congregation giving a talk, or at a board table having a meeting with colleagues, co-workers. It's given me, I'd say, more grace
Yes, most
in
definitely.
how I am a leader and how
Mm-hmm.
I work with my clients.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yes.
So what you might have one more. Do you have one
I have
more?
one more that I think is somewhat connected to what you just talked about. In my work over the years, in church world, specifically with the board and other staff members, the Enneagram has helped me to appreciate people who are the types that are so different than me, or that, for example, I often talk about in a church board like this positive environment, this place where we all want to see the best and be the best and affirm the best and all this. Sometimes the people who identify as and lead with their six, who are the ones who might point out faults or point out traps or point out places where the church or the center is not really doing so well, or the minister isn't, or there's something, quote, wrong, can be so irritating to the positive group that we are. But I've come to really appreciate the voices of those who might not be exactly the same number as me, as an understanding of community, because as we come together in community, all of those voices, all of those perceptions are present. And if I can be one-on-one in a board setting and embrace that voice, hear that person, acknowledge their concern, help to work together to figure it out, or figure out how we're going to communicate it or what we're going to do about it, then I feel like I'm doing that for everyone in the community. And so it's really helped me to be with the opposing voices in the Enneagram even.
Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Well, my last one is I've become more compassionate
Mm-hmm.
and lighter. There's more humor,
Mm-hmm.
especially in my close relationships when we both know our types. Then it allows for more humor. We don't take ourselves so seriously, and I love that
Yeah.
about what I've learned about myself and my family members. There's a greater emphasis on what's working well, having compassion for each other, and also kind of making fun of ourselves when we fall into our personality types.
Sure.
It's
Mm-hmm.
just, as you said early on, there's just more peace and presence with this teaching.
Mm-hmm.
So, what encouragement would you give to someone that is stuck in their type, that
Mm.
is in that space of not being able to see the forest for the trees?
Well, the first advice I would say is, at the very least, read up on your type. There's plenty of literature. There's plenty of podcasts like this and others that can teach about the Enneagram. And if you're really serious about it, find a coach like Allie or myself to help you to navigate those blind spots and to navigate those places where you're not feeling as functional as you might like to feel. Because that's another part, when you said earlier you're a better coach and transformational worker than you were before. I know that sometimes as I'm working with people, and I can even begin to go, oh, they're kind of presenting themselves a little bit like the one, and then I can say to them, here, what about some of these ideas that might help you to move past that thing you're concerned about, even not knowing their exact type. Just some of that can help people begin to experience some transformation. So get help, which is often my go-to conversation, I think, with human beings. We can be stubborn like little 2-year-olds, like, I do it myself. I can figure this out myself. But most of us just can't. There used to be this saying in this counseling center that I worked for briefly, and it was, nobody can do it for you and you can't do it alone. It is really difficult for all of us to see ourselves with that objective viewpoint that a coach can or a counselor can. So if you're really stuck, get some help. Get somebody who can help you talk it through. I think that's really important.
That is really great help. And you have a website where people can connect with you. And can you say the name of that website for those
Yes.
that are listening?
Yes, it's 9pathstothesoul.com with the number 9 in it. And on that site lists how I work and all the different options. I work with people just for a one-time experience where you can start to learn where you are in the Enneagram. And then I have a 3-package series where people can come once they've started to understand where they are and can coach them and support them in that. So lots of options. And I'm sure the same goes for you. Lots of ways that you can help people who are wanting to find themselves in the Enneagram.
Absolutely. And like Michelle, I have my own website, AlisonJBenjamin.com. And I think what I would offer for those that are stuck in their type, there are some very, very specific, once you know your type, there are some very specific strategies that can be absolute game changers in you becoming liberated and having a greater sense of peace and freedom, and be able to be at your growing edge and really take that next step into what you're seeking to become, or who you're seeking to become, and what you're seeking to build. If you've got a project going on, or you've entered into a new job or relationship, there's so many opportunities to grow into who you're becoming once you understand what's keeping you blocked and what's keeping your focus on things that maybe aren't allowing you to take that next step.
Yeah.
So thank you, Michelle. This has been a great conversation. Another, what are we calling this now? I think we're saying Enneagram
chats, isn't it?
Well, I think it was, and then I thought Enneagram at the growing edge.
That's right. Enneagram at the growing edge. That's even better. That's right. I love that. Yes. Enneagram
Awesome.
Beautiful.
All right. We will be back again with more Enneagram and here at the growing edge. And thank you so much for being here today. Really powerful to be with my friend Michelle, my cohort here in Everything Enneagram. I love you, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye. Mwah.
Free my mind, open my heart with the whispers of truth, to live a conscious life, on the growing edge.